This is CBC Here and Now.
Helicopters are necessary and fixed-wing aircraft cannot do it.
The helicopter rescue team is grounded after the chopper company went bankrupt. What does that mean if there's an emergency?
Social media has definitely brought a new level of complexity to the conversations around vaccines.
As the vaccine rollout ramps up, how doctors are dealing with people hesitant to get the needle.
With all the vaccines rolling out, we will get to an Atlantic bubble sometime this spring, and that we will get to domestic travel within Canada sometime this summer.
Tourism operators hope the promise of the vaccine means travel and tourism can resume here this summer. Why they say come-from-away tourism is the only way they can salvage a season.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes.
And I'm Peter Cowan. We start tonight with a Here and Now investigation into why St. John's firefighters don't have the helicopter rescue gear they need.
Well, imagine being stranded on a cliffside near St. John's or getting injured during a hike on remote, rugged terrain. Then imagine being told the special team of firefighters trained to dangle from a helicopter and bring you to safety doesn't have access to a chopper that's up to the job. A CBC News investigation has revealed that's the case right now. Here and Now's Rob Antle reports.
Help called in from above after a man seriously injured his leg while fishing from the rocks. Unable to make the 20-minute walk back to safety, the terrain too tangly for rescuers to carry him out. So instead, St. John's regional firefighters plucked him from the ground and delivered him by air, dropping him here, where paramedics were waiting to take him to hospital. A type of rescue no longer possible in the area around St. John's. That service now grounded.
As of last summer now, we were on standby, I guess, in a holding pattern to see if this service is going to be provided once again.
The rescue team relies on helicopters contracted by the province to do work like this, typically once or twice a year. Last spring, the company that provided the service went bankrupt. The province did find a replacement, but the new helicopters don't have the capacity to do this type of rescue work, leaving the fate of the service up in the air. City officials have made their concerns known. St. John's Fire Chief Sherry Colford telling CBC News in a statement that any change would be through discussions with the province, discussions they will be brought into in the coming weeks. The province now says it expects that the necessary equipment will be in service this spring, but wouldn't make anyone available to clarify details of what's going on.
I would like to understand what their long-term plan is for this type of rescue situations and recoveries, whereby helicopters are necessary and fixed-wing aircraft cannot do it.
The current situation means options are limited. Military search and rescue helicopters can also be called in to provide assistance if they are available. Though the team isn't called into service that often, Smith says it's important when needed, something he knows firsthand. He's been part of the team for 17 years, pictured here making a cliff rescue in 2009.
We want people out into the country. We want people out experiencing what Newfoundland has to offer. But at the same token, most of the Northeast Avalon Peninsula are full of high cliffs edges and very rough terrain and some dangerous areas. And it's nice and comforting to know, I would imagine, that there are rescue services in place should something go astray.
Rob Antle, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, there has been another extension for the ongoing provincial election. The chief electoral officer is extending the deadline to return ballots. Ballots now have to be received at Elections NL headquarters by 4 p.m. on Thursday, March 25th. Bruce Chalk says people expressed concerns that weather and transportation issues might delay the time it takes for mail-in ballots to arrive in St. John's. He says this cutoff date will be strictly enforced. This change means ballots do not have to be postmarked by the 12th, as long as Elections NL has them by the 25th. Anyone who applied for a voting kit should receive it by this Friday. And if you ask for a kit and don't have it by Friday, call Elections NL.
Well, there's one new confirmed case of COVID in the province today. It's a male under 20 in the Eastern Health region, a close contact of a previously known case. There are now 80 active cases in Newfoundland and Labrador. There are 3 people in hospital and all 3 are in intensive care. Health officials say everyone in the province who wants a COVID-19 vaccine should be able to get one by the end of June or early July. But does everyone want one? This province traditionally has higher vaccination rates than other parts of the country, but some healthcare professionals say lately they've been fielding questions about vaccines. Here Now's Mark Quinn reports.
Doctors say they've been looking forward to doing this for a long time now.
For several months now, I'll often end a visit by saying, now you're going to get your vaccine, right?
Family physicians like Dr. Powell say most people say yes, but many patients do have questions too.
Social media has definitely brought a new level of complexity to the conversations around vaccines. So, I see part of my role and my colleagues as being people who impart the best evidence and the best information to their patients.
People who have followed vaccine development closely are convinced the 4 COVID vaccines approved for use in Canada are safe.
It's pretty clear that all these vaccines are safe, and to my knowledge, there hasn't been a concern about safety for any of them in any of the review processes. The only thing that slowed down their approvals at this point is, whether or not we know they're effective and effective in different age groups.
COVID isn't the flu, and Russell says people who never got a flu shot should think about getting a COVID-19 vaccination.
Not getting the flu shot, means you probably won't get the flu anyway because there's enough immunity out there. But that's not the case with this one. There's so little herd immunity right now that, none of us are immune to it.
Back at her office in Grand Falls, Windsor, Powell says she isn't too worried about vaccine hesitancy.
I think as family physicians, our patients often trust our conversations because we have long-term relationships with them.
It's not clear exactly how doctors will be involved in giving needles yet. Health officials say physicians will probably be putting needles in arms in the 3rd phase of the province's inoculation program this coming spring and early summer. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, community groups like the Gathering Place and Salvation Army are happy to hear vulnerable populations are being prioritized in the vaccination plan. As Here and Now's Heather Gillis reports, they also have ideas about how to make the vaccine more accessible to high-risk groups.
This is where thousands of the most vulnerable in St. John's come each year for a hot meal, clothing, medical care, and a place to sleep.
We typically will serve anywhere from 400 to 450 meals a day.
Kim Grant is the acting executive director of the Gathering Place. She's pleased to see the province has prioritized people who live in shelters, group homes, transition homes, and correctional facilities for COVID-19 vaccinations in the 2nd phase of immunizations.
That population is certainly at a much higher risk for contracting the virus and for developing complications of the disease. Many of the guests that we work with experience chronic health conditions which place them at that higher risk. And that combined with some of the socioeconomic factors that they're dealing with, homelessness or being precariously housed, certainly increases that risk.
At the Salvation Army, Major Rennie Lovelace agrees.
Many of our clients have complex needs, which makes them susceptible to the virus. So having as many of our vulnerable population as possible vaccinated is certainly very, very important to us.
Those 70 and above can now pre-register for the vaccine, but you need a trove of information to do that. Things like a phone number and an address.
We're trying to look at who some of our frequent guests are who would be over 70 that we might be able to reach out to and encourage them and help them with that pre-registration process.
Meanwhile, Grant thinks it would be beneficial to hold vaccination clinics at places that are accessible for vulnerable populations. She'd like to see some of them here at the Gathering Place.
They don't frequent some of our traditional health services, so they're not going to go to some of the clinics or pharmacies to get it. So it's really important to bring the vaccine to them, to where they're already getting services. So here at the Gathering Place would be an ideal opportunity to do that. We have a very good partnership with Eastern Health, where we have a health team that provides services here.
Phase 2 of the province's vaccination program, which includes shots for the vulnerable, began in April. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
A reaction tonight from the athletics community to news that team sports may not return to normal until everyone is vaccinated. At the briefing yesterday, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald said the new variant is almost like a new virus. It's more contagious. And she said we've already seen spread at sporting events. According to the president of Hockey NL, that's leaving hockey players and families frustrated. But he says we were lucky to have sports at all during the pandemic, and the province shouldn't push that luck.
Concern for us as sports people, and certainly for hockey, is the variant, the different variant. Nobody knows much about that, and I guess we rely on the CMO, Dr. Fitzgerald, and Dr. Haggie, and the Premier of the province of the day, to give us direction on how we can go back to play safe. Even though, you know, we're hockey people and want to get on the ice and want to play games and want to get to finish off the provincial championships and want to have an end to the season. Everybody understands that. I understand that. I want to finish off the season. But we got to look to the future. Like sometimes the old saying, short-term pain for long-term gain, you know, that's the old philosophy. So hopefully, you know, when we move through this and people do start to get vaccines, I mean, Premier Shuri said yesterday that, you know, he's hoping that everybody, and Dr. Haggie said the same thing, that hopefully we'll have enough vaccine, that everybody's vaccinated by the end of June. So if that's the case, then we'll have a good season in 2021, 2022.
Now, hockey was able to salvage most of its season this year, but summer sports organizers are wondering whether they'll be able to play at all. Baseball St. John's wants to know if they should start planning.
We're seeing a lot of our provincial partners across the country right now that are further ahead than what we are, even though they have a worse situation than us. And I think that's where a lot of the stress is coming from. Right now, we're the only province, with the exception of Ontario, that's not allowing small group practice, at least. So I think the big question right now is, why can we in this province not do what all the other provinces are doing? Is it a lack of commitment from the province that, you know, sports is important? Or is it that, you know, we're just being a little bit more cautious than everyone else? I just think there's some lack of communication and commitment on that level. As much as I know about, you know, public health measures, I know that if they tell us we need to do A, B, C, D, if it's anything like last year, we'll do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like, we'll do whatever we have to do to make it work. And, you know, not just from a baseball perspective, I know everyone in these situations would do the same thing to make it viable and safe for our kids.
Well, from amateur teams to semi-professional sports, businessman Dean McDonald says he's not getting very far with his bid to buy the Mile 1 Stadium in St. John's. As we've reported, the owner of Deacon's Sports and Entertainment, as well as the Newfoundland Growlers, wants to give Mile 1 a $25 million makeover. He wants to build theaters, a recording studio, a 2-story sports bar, but says the city refuses to meet with him and discuss a possible partnership. McDonald says Mile 1 is a burden on the city and St. John's taxpayers. He was a guest on CBC Radio's Crosstalk today and had this to say.
We've said we don't have to own it all. We're prepared to partner with the city. We're open to other ideas. So we think we can share a whole bunch of expertise with them. It feels like I've asked if I could pave the harbor, honestly. It's like the walls went up. It's like, oh, no, we can't talk. Our plan calls for a 365-day-a-year utilization of the facility. What's the fear that we put a whole bunch of money into the building and we decide we don't want to be in the business anymore? Well, geez, at least you have an improved building.
Well, Halifax Regional Police are warning the public about a high-risk offender who was just released from prison after serving more than 6.5 years behind bars. 53-year-old Gerald Edmund Pike committed most of his offenses in this province. His criminal history dates back to 1999 and includes convictions for sexual assault, assault causing bodily harm, and uttering threats. In 2 separate cases, Pike pursued women before attacking them. Pike is under orders to stay away from children and abstain from drugs and alcohol. Well, politicians from all parties are throwing their weight behind a big expansion of the seal hunt. It comes after some processors in Fleur-de-Lis cut open a seal's stomach to reveal the crab inside.
Politicians say something must be done to decrease animal predation of fish stocks. and some are even floating the possibility of a cull.
Here and Now's Garrett Berry continues his coverage of this story tonight, and again, a warning: some of the images may be difficult to watch.
Oh, crab shells.
Oh, crab shells.
They've seen the clips.
I've had a close look at it, yes. And, you know, the graphics do work.
Very graphic imagery. Certainly brings home the point of their concern.
And they all say this stew of seal stomach proves a point.
And when you watch it, it's emotional.
It used to be that people ate seals, and now you could say seals are eating people. At least they're eating people's livelihoods. And that graphically portrays that.
And if you want graphic, consider this: a mass killing of seals to control their population.
In other words, a seal cull if necessary, but not necessarily a seal cull.
His first choice would be a bigger hunt.
The skins, the oil, the omega-3 content, the meat, the whole works. There are markets.
But he says calling for a cull is a dramatic step to show the size of this problem.
Let me tell you a couple of things. First of all, Heather is incorrect.
And if that means drawing international ire, so be it.
I don't answer to CNN. I answer to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And if a seal cull has to be talked about, and if it's what is needed to get federal attention on the problem of seals and seal consumption of valuable species, then that's what we got to talk about.
But on that question,
I think that will be an incredible waste of a creature.
There's no consensus.
I'd rather think in terms of a harvest of an animal and of a population, as long as they can be sustained. And how do you turn that into jobs for the local economy? It's about developing markets.
The fisheries minister agrees there needs to be a better plan.
To make a loud political statement because I want to get votes, unlike what Chess Crosby and the PC party is doing. I'm not going to do that. That's disrespectful and irresponsible, I believe, to the voter and to the people in this industry. We need a sound plan.
And what is that plan? He says a first step is more research.
We need to do more with science. Again, it's DFO, science-led. We need to do more, and when we have better science, we make better decisions on this resource or any resource within the fishing industry.
It's a big question, but each of these politicians say the provincial government can find answers. Garrett Perry, CBC News, Gander.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
I'm filling in for Ashley again tonight. It was a gorgeous day for most people in the province. Here's a look at the highs today. In St. John's, got up to -2 with mostly cloudy skies, but have a look at Corner Brook, Deer Lake, 3 degrees. So pretty mild over on the west coast there today. Hopedale was at 0 today. So yeah, not a bad day for most people, and it's going to continue to be very nice, particularly if you're on the island. Tomorrow, another beautiful day coming. If you have anything to do outdoors, tomorrow would be a great day to do it. Temperatures above 0 for most on the island tomorrow, and that's going to continue for a couple of days, and Labrador is in for a bit of snow. So let's have a look at tonight. Not much on the go. We have some flurries on the west coast of the island. The western portion of Labrador could also see some flurries overnight tonight, as well as the Burin Peninsula, but overall it's pretty quiet. Northwesterly winds in the east, 20 gusting to 40. Wind chill, fairly chilly, -12 for the St. John's area overnight tonight. Corner Brook looking at an overnight low of -3 with a wind chill of -9. In Labrador, it's going to be a bit breezy along the north coast. Westerly wind 30 gusting to 50, and cold as well. -11 as the overnight low, feeling colder with that wind chill. And for Labrador City, -9 as the overnight low with some light winds. Have a look at this beautiful photo from Nain. Jeremy Hallwell sent this in to us, and I just wanted to show it off because I thought it was beautiful. That was this morning at 6 a.m. So here's our early outlook for tomorrow morning. As you head out the door, these are the temperatures you're going to be contending with. It's going to be a chilly start to the day, but as I mentioned, it is going to warm up. So we have a mix of sun and cloud for pretty much the whole island. Could see some early morning flurries for the western portion of the island, and some cooler temperatures in Labrador to start the day. So have a look at the island, just totally clear tomorrow, and we do have some snow moving in for Lab City. It won't be super heavy snow, but it will be, you know, a bit of a messy day with those flurries. So here are our highs for tomorrow. Not too bad. Lots of sunshine on the menu tomorrow, between 2 and 3 degrees on the Avalon Peninsula with some westerly winds, 20 gusting to 40. So that's a very nice day, it seems, shaping up for tomorrow. Very similar story for central areas of the island, and those flurries for the west coast, and some westerly winds there as well for tomorrow. As we head up to the Straits, cools down slightly, but still lots of sunshine. And for the rest of Labrador, there are those flurries that are coming through tomorrow. Won't be super heavy snow, maybe 2 to 4 centimeters. Breezy in western Labrador, though, 30 gusting to 50. So we do have a messy system on the way. It's going to continue to bring snow to Labrador, and as we go through the week, we're going to see some rain coming to the island. So I'll have more of those details coming up a little later on Here and Now.
With all the vaccines rolling out, we will get to an Atlantic bubble sometime this spring, and that we will get to domestic travel within Canada sometime this summer.
Coming up next, why the tourism industry hopes the vaccine will allow visitors to come from other provinces this summer. Well, there's a glimmer of hope for this summer's tourism season. Health Minister John Haggie has already said summer 2021 would be another year of staycations, and they could even start a little earlier than last year. But what does this mean for the hospitality industry and its needs for tourists from outside of the province? Well, Brenda O'Reilly is a restaurant owner and chair of Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Peter.
So what would it mean for your industry if the provincial borders remain closed and you have to rely on staycations again this year?
You know, the staycation, while it's great, it's always been a part of our tourism mix anyway. I mean, I know last year that's all we really had. And we do appreciate, the fellow people of the province getting out and exploring the province and enjoying all we have to offer. But clearly, it's not enough to sustain a tourism industry. You know, for every dollar that a local spends, the international traveler spends three. So that's new money into the province and remains in the province. So it's good for the economy, and obviously it's what the tourism industry survives from.
There are lots of programs to help, though, that are going to cover, 3/4 of the wages for workers, some of the rent. Doesn't that kind of make up for the fact that you're not able to get that extra revenue you'd normally have?
No, so that's a big myth, So I'm one of those operators that has been opened for the whole time when we could be. Of course, we're closed now. However, we're still losing money every day, even though we're open. And if it wasn't for those federal programs, the wage subsidy and the rent programs, that kind of thing, we wouldn't be open because we just wouldn't be able to afford to be open. But we're still losing money. We're just losing less by being opened. So, everybody has to evaluate their own business with their own merits. And but it's not a recipe for success when we can't be opened, when our borders can't be open. We're hoping with all the vaccines rolling out, and not only here in the province, but around the world and the rest of Canada, the United States, that we will get to an Atlantic bubble sometime this spring, and that we will get to domestic travel within Canada sometime this summer. So I'm optimistic that the vaccines and the extra testing and the protocols for health and safety, the COVID protocols that we're all doing, the COVID app, recommending and suggesting downloading the COVID app and maybe QR codes, but there is a path forward to getting the tourism industry open.
But when do operators need to know what the summer is going to look like in order to be able to plan?
I think most are planning now. Those who operated last year, kind of know what to expect with the staycation. We're entrepreneurs. We're glass half full people. We're being optimistic that we will do better than that. The staycation alone won't cut it. It's not enough for us to sustain the tourism industry. While we value it, and it is already a part of the tourism industry, it is not sustainable. We can't sustain our businesses on just the locals. We're imploring the government to, as things get better, to consider the Atlantic bubble again, and as people get vaccinated. And when you look at countries like Iceland, they're allowing a vaccination passport for people to travel to their country. So, while that's not just a regional approach, we're hoping that the government of Canada will look at that as well, and that we can get back to some sort of travel. People are going to be nervous about traveling. They're not just going to go, oh, I can travel, let's all go. There's going to be barriers to it. People are going to be nervous. There's also going to be the cost of it. Access is a problem. We don't have enough access here in the province as it is right now. So, so there's lots of barriers to traveling. So, it's not like the floodgates will open and, hundreds of thousands of people will pour in here. That's not going to be the reality. But we certainly do need to start getting back to, recovery.
You mentioned that a lot of people have been losing money, even with government support programs. How sustainable is it? How many are going to just decide that they can't continue anymore and go under?
So that's not a number I know definitively, but I do know that across Canada, from the restaurant sector, there has been 10,000 restaurants that have closed permanently since the pandemic. So, that's a big number. There's going to be some people choose not to continue. We can't continue to keep losing money. Remember, no one's responsible for the pandemic in our province, like the fact that it's here and what we have to do to protect the public. But, we really are stuck between a rock and a hard place here. We not only have a public health crisis, which hopefully with the vaccinations and the testing and, we know better how to protect ourselves. It's been a year. But now we're into an economic crisis as well. And so government needs to start looking at this economic crisis and how we get out of it. And stimulating the economy and getting people back to business is the way forward.
Brenda O'Reilly, appreciate you sharing your thoughts with me today.
Thank you very much.
Well, as we just heard, tourism operators here are hoping for an Atlantic bubble, but there will likely be a maritime bubble first. Premiers in the Maritimes have said they'd like to see travel resume in their region. Travel throughout the region halted in December when the bubble collapsed due to several outbreaks in Atlantic Canada. Today, Nova Scotia Premier Ian Rankin says there's a meeting next week with other maritime premiers to discuss reopening the maritime bubble. But Newfoundland and Labrador is not being considered to rejoin at this time. Yesterday, Premier Andrew Furey said there's still a lot of uncertainty here to deal with before he can discuss joining an Atlantic bubble. As people across the country deal with the isolation of lockdowns, there are some in New Brunswick looking for even more solitude. And that has them exploring Long Island, a remote place that once thrived as a community. The CBC's Julia Wright explores the history of Long Island and why people are heading there.
Every day, thousands living along the mouth of the Kennebecasis River take in breathtaking views of the rocky cliffs and sprawling forests of Long Island. But unless you're able to navigate the waters or brave the ice, it feels like a world away. Once occupied by farmers and fishermen, it's now uninhabited except for a few seasonal cottages. Even the logging companies have left it alone after their trucks crashed through the ice decades ago. And that is exactly how the few who wander its woods want it.
Well, this island was inhabited in the very late 1700s, and approximately 75 families lived here through the 1800s, farming it and so on, and so it has a long history of people living here. It had a schoolhouse, it had a general store, it had a post office, it had all the amenities that were needed for a community, and the river boats used to stop here and let people off and take people to town to get provisions and so on. So it's got a long history of people living here. So I just enjoy the fact of being able to come over here and spend some time over here and just think about the history, drive down through the trails, and just imagine how people lived way back in the day. That's what I enjoy about the island. It has a unique setting where it's just far enough away from the valley that we can come over here and you feel that you're so far away from habitation, but you're really so close. So it's very unique. This is not, you don't have an island like this in most places of this world where you can just go in a short, for me, it's a very short distance to get across the river, summer or winter, and then almost feel like you're in, in the deep forest somewhere where you're still very close to habitation, I guess.
Vaccine. While you sung out with your vaccine questions, we get an immunologist at Memorial University to answer them coming up next.
Tommy, listen to this.
Oh, this is country music.
I first got interested in synthesizers probably when I was in junior high school, from what I remember.
I don't know if I would have released this album if it weren't for the pandemic.
I literally got just so involved with the guitar itself.
Vaccine, 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 vaccine. I'm begging of you, please don't hesitate. Vaccine.
Whether you're singing about it like Dolly Parton there or just hoping to get it, vaccines are a hot topic of conversation. This week alone, we're expecting 20,000 more doses to arrive in this province, and vaccinations are only expected to ramp up from there. So, with all of this happening, we know you've got a lot of questions. Well, Michael Grant is a professor of immunology and associate dean of biomedical science at Memorial University, and hopefully he's going to answer some of them. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Peter.
So let's talk about effectiveness of the vaccine, because we've got 4 different vaccines with different rates of effectiveness depending on the company. When they talk about this percentage, like it's 66% or 95% effective, what are they actually talking about there?
So in order to get the vaccines approved, the companies need to do trials with very large numbers of people. And they'll split the people blindly into 2 groups. One group will get a placebo, and the other group will be injected with the vaccine. So an efficacy or an effectiveness of 95% means that if 100 people in the placebo group actually get infected with the virus, only 5 people in the group that receive the vaccine get infected with the virus.
How worried should people be that they might be getting a dose of the less effective vaccine, one of the ones like Johnson & Johnson or AstraZeneca, compared to Pfizer and Moderna, which are over 90%?
Well, I mean, that's a hard question to answer. They shouldn't really worry because any of the vaccines are giving them more protection than they would have if they don't get a vaccine. In the longer term, it's starting to look more and more like people will need to get their immunity revised or boosted, perhaps annually, perhaps less often. But it shouldn't, even if the vaccine is slightly inferior to another one that's on the market now, the general advice is to take the one that's available to you and get some protection against infection.
Right now, these vaccines are only approved for adults. When do you expect that we're going to see approvals for children?
I don't expect to see that anytime soon for a number of reasons. First of all, children are not a priority group to be protected against infection with coronavirus because, as our recent outbreak in St. John's illustrates, there were a lot of young people who were infected with the virus who showed absolutely no symptoms at all. So they're not at particular risk for getting very sick from the virus. It's also more difficult for the companies to do rapid trials that involve children as opposed to enrolling adults into the trials. If it were a crisis situation, the chances are that the vaccines that have already been licensed could be used in children.
So these vaccines were tested with the second doses coming either 3 or 4 weeks after the first dose. How much risk do you think we're taking by delaying our second shots by up to 12 weeks now?
We're taking some risk, but there's good evidence that the vaccines generate protective immunity even after the first injection. So if the protective immunity is there after the first injection, it's not likely that the immunity is going to wane very quickly within 3 or 4 months. You might be pushing it a little bit out to the level of 4 months, but it's not likely the immunity that's present, that's providing 80% protection, is going to wane that much over a 4-month period.
Now in BC, they're seeing cases in a nursing home there where the residents were vaccinated, there was good uptake inside the home, and people are still getting sick with COVID. How concerned should we be about that?
Well, we should be concerned about it on the basis that there are groups of people who may not respond to the vaccine as well. So there's a large study ongoing in Atlantic Canada of elderly people in long-term care homes who received the vaccine. How well do they respond to the vaccine? Do they develop immunity? It's known from past studies with influenza vaccines that some elderly people do not respond as well to an influenza vaccine. So if your immune system has been weakened by a number of different things over time and you don't respond as well to the vaccine, then there's still a risk of being infected. And you're going to see this most likely in a setting like a long-term care home with elderly individuals who are less likely to make a good immune response against the virus, and they're in a setting where if the virus is introduced, it's still going to spread because of the close contact that they have. But it's not something that the general public should necessarily worry about. A healthy young individual who gets the vaccine, healthy younger individual, is very likely to be protected against symptomatic or any signs of illness.
The one thing that I think we're all waiting for is when are we going to reach that herd immunity stage where we can start lifting all of the lockdown measures that we have in place. So when do you expect we're going to get to that point?
And even when most of the population has the vaccine, they're suggesting that they'll still want us to wear masks if we're traveling on airplanes, wear masks in crowded indoor places, and continue to take precautions as if, again, the vaccines are just the final level of protection that's provided with us. Things like the variants that are emerging and the breakthrough infections that we've seen at this time only in long-term care homes with special populations. But there's still going to be some concern that will delay the issuing of something that would, like an immunity passport or a declaration that we've reached herd immunity. It's likely to be partially a political decision, partially a public health decision, partially a realization that if the immunizations are not about necessarily eradicating the virus, but allowing the population to get back towards some level of normalcy.
Well, Michael Grant, I appreciate you sharing your insights and answering some of our questions today.
Thank you for the opportunity, Peter.
Buckingham Palace has ended its silence following Oprah Winfrey's explosive interview on Sunday night with Prince Harry and Meghan. It has called the issues raised about race particularly concerning and serious. Tessa Arcilia has more on the statement made on behalf of the Queen and the allegations that precipitated it.
Sir, can I ask, what did you think of the interview?
At first, there was silence. And finally, a statement from Buckingham Palace. The whole family is saddened to learn the full extent of how challenging the last few years have been for Harry and Meghan. The issues raised, particularly that of race, are concerning. While some recollections may vary, they are taken very seriously and will be addressed by the family privately. Harry, Meghan, and Archie will always be much-loved family members. That issue of race was Meghan's claim that the skin color of their then-unborn son Archie was a concern within the palace. But it wasn't just inside palace walls. The royal couple felt they were unfairly treated by the British media, in particular the tabloid press, criticisms which didn't land very well with some in the newspaper business.
Harry and Meghan said that they left Britain in part because of racism towards them. But the accusation that this was caused by sections of the British media who are racist, I'm afraid is just not true, and it's not borne out by the evidence of the coverage.
Diane Abbott, the UK's first female black MP, made it clear she saw bias.
You have to draw conclusions from the way Meghan was systematically criticised and attacked for things which other white members of the royal family could get away with.
Accusations of racism, Meghan's suicidal thoughts, Harry's rift with his dad. These are just a few revelations from the 2-hour-long tell-all interview. Serious enough for the palace to break its silence. Tessa Arcilia, CBC News, London.
Time now for a look at the long-range forecast, and we have a really nice few days in store, starting with tomorrow. Let's have a little recap of what's on the menu for tomorrow. Have a look at the island. Lots of sunshine, temperatures above zero pretty much across the board. 3 degrees in Marystown, 2 degrees in St. John. Some fairly light winds. Could see some flurries in Corner Brook in the morning, but just shaping up to be a lovely day tomorrow. For Labrador, nice in the Cartwright and area and along the straits there. Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Nain and Lab City looking at some flurries tomorrow and some higher winds, southwesterly winds 30 gusting to 50 for the western portion of Labrador. So here are those flurries that will be pushing across Labrador throughout the day to southeastern Labrador and on the northern peninsula of the island on Thursday. And then we're going to start to see some of that system. It'll be like that mix of rain and snow moving eastwards. So this is Thursday evening, and we're looking at temperatures still very mild. 4 degrees in St. John's. We won't be seeing that system until later on in the evening, so most of the day will be quite sunny. Grand Falls, Windsor looking at 4 degrees with that mix of rain and snow. 5 degrees in Corner Brook, so really getting some milder temperatures. Going to stay very chilly though in Nain, sticking at -10 for Thursday, even though it's going to be 3 degrees in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. So some nice temperatures for most of us. So this system will continue on into Friday. It'll be mostly a snowmaker for Labrador, mostly a rainmaker for the island. So that is when we're going to see some of that rain there on Friday, and it's really going to bump up the temperatures as well. 4 degrees in St. John's on Friday, 6 in Corner Brook, so looking quite nice in terms of temperatures, but it's going to be a wet one as we head into the weekend. And for Labrador, some snow for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and you can see that messy mix once again for some areas. Going to stay chilly in Nain at -11 on Friday heading into the weekend. So Friday evening, that rain's going to stick around for a bit in the east, and then as we head into the weekend, some snow for most of the island as well as parts of Labrador. That's when we're going to start to see the temperatures dip back down again. So here's how the 5-day forecast is looking. Great temperatures as soon as we get to the end of Saturday and we start to see those flurries move in and some snow there on Sunday and dipping back down to -3 degrees for the east. For central areas, a very similar story, some rain on Friday, and then we move into some flurries on the weekend and the cooler temperatures as we end off the week. For western Labrador, 6 degrees, as I mentioned, on Friday, and some flurries there as well over the weekend, and temperatures cooling down for the rest of the province in Labrador. Quite a difference between Thursday and Sunday, 3 degrees there, -11 there. So lots of snow on the way, a prolonged snowfall for parts of Labrador, and for western Labrador clearing off nicely but cooling down for sure on the weekend. So let's have a look at our viewer photo of the day. This is gorgeous. Harp Lake. Wow. This was taken from the plane trip between Voisey's Bay and Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Just beautiful shot. Thank you so much to Harrison Barney of Rocky Harbor for sending this in. And if you have a weather photo you'd like to see on the news, you can send it to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Great job as always with the weather.
Oh, thanks.
And speaking of people who are doing some great jobs, the Juno nominations came out today, celebrating the best in Canadian music and entertainment.
Yes, and 3 artists from this province received nods.
Well, the Florian Hoffner Trio, with their album First Spring, is nominated for a Juno for Jazz Album of the Year.
Yeah, here they are performing last year for CBCNL's Parkway Sessions.
Comedian Matt Wright is nominated for a Juno. You may think, hold on a second, comedian? Yep, there is a Comedy Album of the Year. And it's for that, not his singing skills.
Yes, Wright is a stand-up comedian and a former writer for this hour, has 22 minutes.
And Rum Ragged, a local folk band, is up for Traditional Roots Album of the Year for the album The Thing About Fish.
Yes, Rum Ragged also performed on CBCNL's Parkway Sessions. As we leave you tonight, we'll bring you a song from that album, Shady Brookside. Good luck to all of the nominees. And good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
It was summer, I remember, and the days were warm and long, when a robin with a red breast came to greet me with a song. It reminds me of a parting long ago by the brookside.